So Paul, I think there's only really one place to start, and that's with the amount of injuries you've got.
Yeah.
I think as of Tuesday it was Winchester, Morgan Feeney, Josh Feeney, Jordan Roster. Are you able to give us any updates? Was there any further updates from Tuesday on any of those?
I think we've got another injury to add to it.
Okay.
That's what I will say. Perhaps one of those, possibly two, could be fit. I don't really want to divulge names just in terms of helping Huddersfield out at all, albeit I'm sure they're obviously full of confidence in terms of the start they've had and will be clear favourites going into the game. But from our point of view, yeah, bit of sort of mixed in terms of the number of injuries. Like I said, maybe some positive news and perhaps a negative as well.
Is that sort of, how much is that sort of affecting your preparation for a game? Obviously, you started the 4-2-3-1 at the start of the season, then Roster pulled out, you had to go to that one holding midfielder.
Yeah.
Is it sort of affecting tactics heading into a game?
A little bit, but look, I'm not sat here saying that that's an excuse for, as in not getting any wins in normal time at least. It's part and parcel of football. I would just say that, as I've kind of alluded to before, a lot of the clubs in our league are probably better equipped to deal with injuries, perhaps more than we are. But again, went into this with sort of my eyes wide open, and we know that that's always going to be a possible issue that we've got to deal with, and it's just shown its head quite quickly, unfortunately. So we get on with it, and that's got to be the sort of mantra. And while ever we can at least put a team out there, then that's the most important thing. And we've got to be, whatever that team is, has to be ready to go and run and compete. And I think at times we've done all right. I don't feel that there's not any positives to take from games. The game the other night we should have won. I think every stat I looked at was in our favour, but I promise you it's not lost on me the most important stat, and that was we did lose the game because of the scoreline, and that's always the most important. But at the same time, I think there was still some good performances, but there is an element of we're not helping ourselves, and that's what's got to change in terms of how we will get results that we're a lot happier with, is by stop shooting ourselves in the foot or making it more difficult than it should be.
Yeah, that's something you spoke about after that Fulham game, that you were left scratching your head at some of the basics of football. Yeah. Sort of how frustrating is it that you're having to address those basics? And is that something you've been working on in the week as well?
I think it's hard to work on, I honestly do. I think, as I said, there's an element of confidence can come into that. So sometimes the work is kind of opposite to maybe what you want to do or the way that you want to react. It's about trying to make some people feel better about themselves, showing people or reminding them of some of the good bits of play, whether that's as a team, whether that's as individuals. Because like I said, it's definitely not all been bad, but just frustrating in terms of some of the mistakes, like I said, that we have made. Whether that's led to goals, whether that's just in general play, some things that just need to try and tighten up on and be tidier in. That we and the things that I'm talking about in general, I know 100% the players can do them. It's not asking someone to be a player that they're not, or do something that they're not capable of.
Is that a case of maybe heads just dropping a bit too easy maybe when you do concede a goal?
I'm not sure. I think definitely if we talk about the Peterborough game, that was, the fourth goal was ridiculous. We, said that at the time. That can't happen. Yes, it's deflating because you're still well in the game, irrespective of whether they were dangerous when they were attacking or not. The scoreline was 2-1. We've had that one cleared off the line. Still very much in the game. It's the 87th minute, I think it was. And still in with a chance. We know there's a lot of late goals. You concede the third, all right, the game more than likely has gone at that stage, but you keep it at worst at that scoreline. You don't just give them a goal like we did. the other night. I thought we actually responded well to the equaliser. Again, it was a late goal the other way, but I think they've probably done okay in terms of the response to that. But it's just, like I said, I think the nature of some of the goals we've conceded are probably what damages the players' mindset more than anything.
You mentioned that you remind those players what they're capable of in terms of getting their confidence back. Is that something you sort of work on them with as a group or individually, or a bit of both?
Both. Certainly had some individual chats this week that, for genuine reason of trying to make that player feel confident, feel the best, or in some cases maybe highlighting some of the decisions that they're not making that they need to improve on. And again, that is very much done on an individual basis. You know, the old sort of saying of some people need an arm round the shoulder, some need a kick up the backside. And what I would say, still, you get a pretty good sort of feel for it anyway, but there's still new relationships being built in terms of myself and the new signing, certainly. So it's a bit of perhaps trial and error, but one thing I've done and would always like to feel is that I have a good relationship with players, and trying to build those relationships. Trust is massive in terms of any relationships that you have, whether that's at work, at home, whatever it is. And that's still in them early stages, I think, overall. But I had a couple of conversations with people either linked directly or indirectly, and I think they are positive ones, as in those relationships being built. So hopefully that is the case. And then there's always the group work that you do in terms of highlighting things that we've done well, things that we can do better, and obviously the opposition analysis that we've got to, things that we've got to be wary of.
Yeah, obviously Huddersfield tomorrow, favourites to go straight back up to the Championship. What are your feelings and thoughts heading into that?
Tough. The truth is, watching them, there's very little that I've seen in the games today that you would really pick out and say, yeah, that's an obvious place we can really get at them. They've been relatively dominant in all the games. Have given up a couple of chances, in fairness, but they are understandably a strong team, a strong squad. I think when they made the changes for the cup game against Morecambe, you're still talking about a lot of players that would get in. I would say all League One teams, quite a few Championship teams, I'm sure, would be happy to take those players. So that's the calibre you're up against. But from my point of view, and what we've stressed to the players is, one, we've got to play the game. The game isn't decided before we get there. It's we need to turn up, and we need to turn up a very good version of ourselves to give ourselves a chance. And also, what a place to go and play. There'll be a big crowd, lovely stadium, big pitch. You want people to rise to that, and that's what I'm hoping that we'll get. Last season, I think we certainly had some performances that I think was almost judged that the players perform better on the bigger stages. I'd love that for tomorrow. I would say I'd love that for this group, but I don't. I want it to be always trying to perform. But it wouldn't be a bad start by getting a really good performance at Huddersfield.
Yeah, obviously you've got quite a few young players in your team. You mentioned about going to Huddersfield, the stadium, the atmosphere, obviously a few seasons ago in a Premier League club. Is that something you can sort of prepare those young players who perhaps haven't played in that sort of atmosphere before? I
think you can, again, give bits of information, and a bit cliche as such, but it's definitely you don't change how you play. The game's the same, it's just the surroundings that are different. But sometimes you've got to go through those experiences, whether it's on the touchline, whether it's as a player. Difference being, as a player, you've really judged in terms of your actions. You've got opponents trying to disrupt your game, so it can be more difficult. But sometimes younger players are actually better equipped because there's an element of no fear. They haven't had perhaps too many bad experiences or been through it. When you're an experienced pro and you played a lot of games, sometimes that can leave a bit of scar tissue. the best people, you know, and the ones probably go on and have the best careers learn how to deal with it. But hopefully, again, for those younger players that we have got, it can only help, you know, inspire them. Because, you know, some of the younger ones, let's be honest, will be hoping to go on to better things. So they've got to be able to, you know, they've got to start somewhere to dealing with those bigger attendances.
Yeah. On those young players, one in particular, shone on Tuesday, Charles Sago Jr. Spoke to him earlier, speaks very well for 20 years old. So why did you want to bring him to the club, and what have you made of his first couple of weeks in the team? I
think just to touch on before going any further in terms as a person, I think that came across to myself speaking to him, what a sort of lovely lad he is. And some people might be listening to us and thinking, I don't really care, I just want him to be a good footballer. And there's a little bit of that, but it doesn't stop you being a nice person. I think when you cross that white line, then you also want to have an edge to you and a desire to impress and improve. And I think the other night took him a little while to get into the game, not particularly through his own fault, but was getting the ball to him as well. But then he started to show what he can do. And the reason why, you know, I've liked him and want to bring him in, his ability to run at players, to carry the ball up the pitch, to put defenders on the back foot, and you know, and beat a man. So I think he showed a lot of those attributes. You know, he managed to get 70 minutes, but that's the most football he's played, because, as I said, when we first got him, that his pre-season's been different than what would have been ideal from a selfish point of view for us. So it was a good start for him, but I think he'll admit himself, you know, there's some work to do. Not through any fault of his own, but to get to where he wants to be, you know, overall. But I think I believe he will have spoke to you about how he settled in, and like I said, it's a good, nice group of people, but that nice group have got to have an edge, as I keep saying, and Charles that might be part of his learning as well, but certainly made a good start.
You said after the game on Tuesday you weren't really expecting anyone to come into the club before tomorrow. Is that sort of still the case? And how's it sort of looking for the next week? Obviously, a week till the window closes now. Yeah,
it is, and then we'll all be glad in a lot of ways to stop asking them questions. No, I think it's as I kind of probably expected. Not trying to pull a fast one on Huddersfield, but that's just where we're at. But what I would say is we've had a really positive conversation elsewhere, that hopefully start of next week that we might have a new body in.
Yeah, and overall, are you happy with the business you've been able to do so far this window?
Yeah, look, it's been, I think I said all along, it's just we've had to be patient. I said that we would, but along with that patience that we've had to show, you know, behind the patience there's also a frustration. You want everyone in sooner, and the reality is, again, our market is limited compared to most of League One. So we have to, you know, again, the analogies that go around about shopping in certain supermarkets, I'll not name establishments, but it probably runs true for ourselves. But again, I think we know that, and you just do the best what you can. So I think where we are and everything, that we've done pretty well. We've had to take some gambles at the minute. A couple of them gambles have probably highlighted that they are gambles, but hopefully they can be back fit and prove that they are good players as well.
And do you expect anyone to leave the club, or?
Not really, because again, numbers wise, we're not in a position where we're not quite Chelsea, where we've got a few too many players. We certainly haven't got a separate training group, so that would probably leave us light. Never say never, but again, I think if that happened, we would then, you know, certainly have to bring someone else in. So we'll see, but it's not anything I'm really expecting.
And just finally from me, when I last spoke to you, obviously after I've spoken to you, 4 young players went out on loan.
Yeah.
You sort of keeping across how those are doing as well every week.
Yeah, and they were up at training today because they obviously not got a game with the youth team, so keep dipping in and out. They are being monitored and will be monitored, because otherwise, you know, if I ask them, they'll either with one or the other, they'll either being brilliant every single game or rubbish, depending on what type of character they are. So we're getting feedback on them, and part of it again is going into, you know, men's football, adults football, however you want to phrase it, to experience a different environment, see how they get on. But it's a big part of it is about the experience. Hopefully they can take some learnings from it that the training pitch and youth team games don't give them. And for those lads, how they, you know, they don't have to be roaring successes at the clubs. I hope they are, but I think they will take a lot more, even if it isn't, you know, if I lose Luca as an example, if Luca doesn't score 20 goals, it doesn't mean that he won't have took a lot from that loan. So we'll keep an eye on them, and we can get them back, you know, instantly if needed. So they're very much still sort of they're not being sort of shoved to one side and forgot about.
Best of luck tomorrow.
Thank you, cheers.